tinker, tailor, soldier, sailor, butcher, baker, candlestick maker. All very noble professions, to be sure, but which one is best suited to dangerous adventures in space? Yes, today on Dragon's Teeth, we're looking at character classes for Mothership. Hi, I'm Rob Hoyton. Thanks for joining me today for this latest update on the forthcoming Mothership campaign. And today we're looking at character classes. Now, I think it's very important in RPGs to match your character occupation or class to the scenario, to the adventure, to the campaign. After all, you may be head chef, but when something with 26 legs is rushing at you down the corridor, your cooking skills are probably not going to be that useful. Unless you're Casey Ryback, maybe. And this is another area where we're tweaking the Mothership rules in order to suit the setting and suit the campaign. Generally, people seem to play Mothership in one-shots, though I've noticed on the Discord server now, a lot more people are talking about campaigns. Now, for one-shots, the existing character classes work great. You've got Android, Scientist, Teamster, Marine, and your character may well be pre-generated if you're playing at a convention or something. So those give you a great instant idea of exactly what your character's about. Everyone knows how to play a Marine or the Teamster and so on and so on. I wanted to broaden that out a little bit because of course we have a very specific campaign setting and the characters are in a very specific organisation. And the other thing of course is for a campaign, people want to create their own characters, they want to develop some background and everything else, give the characters a reason to be where they are. And of course, as the campaign develops, if the characters have a background, and it doesn't need to be hugely detailed even, but if they have that background there, the Warden can draw on that to bring other threads into the narrative. So the major change for my campaign is we're not having androids as a character class. A couple of reasons for this. One, for me personally, I don't think that's a very interesting role to play. Secondly, the tech level in the Assault Team 5 setting. Yes, we have robots and mechs, but we don't have these full-on androids that could pass for human. So, androids are out. There will be robots in the game, but I think, as I said before, think more like a decrepit, rusty C-3PO rather than a perfectly formed human android. In terms of the specific organisation or group I mentioned, Assault Team 5 is a code name for a new covert ops outfit. So, despite the name, they are not a combat team as such. This means that members of the group will need quite a wide range of skills. Think of like Mission Impossible. They're more Mission Impossible than an assault team going in to clear a building. Of course, there will be elements of combat within the game, but there's also going to be a lot of these soft skills as well. Infiltration, surveillance, social skills, maybe even things like occult knowledge, who knows. So it's not just an assault team despite the name. So I've come up with 5 character classes based on those originals but slightly broadened out. Rather than Marine now, you could be services. This could be a Marine, it could be a Lander, which is the equivalent of a sort of paratroops in the setting. You could be a close protection specialist, you could be a naval officer, perhaps a pilot or something similar, but you could also be law enforcement, like a cop or a detective, maybe even a bounty hunter. So that is our general services class. Next, I've changed the name of Teamsters to Tech Mech. Teamsters, as I said before, is quite an American concept. We don't really have that in the UK, and as I mentioned in the setting, I wanted to make this a little less US centric. Not that I've got anything against the US, well, we could talk about that, right? But again, most of the characters in the book are not American. So instead we've gone Tech Mech. That covers engineers. You might be a computer specialist. You might be into electronics, very good with surveillance devices, perhaps, that sort of thing. It could be a demolition expert. You never know when that's going to come in handy. Dynamite solves a lot of problems, right? Following that, we have scientist. So, chemist, biologist, geologist, also medical, of course. You might be a doctor, you might be a psychologist, and so on. And finally, a bit of a catch-all one that covers anything else, which for the moment I've just called civilian. So you could be corporate, you might be legal, you might be accounts, but you could also be a criminal as well. And this actually has historic precedence because SEO, for example, when Churchill set up SEO in World War II, whose job was to go behind enemy lines, infiltrate, collect intelligence, blow up things, generally, was it cause chaos? I think he said set Europe ablaze. Well, they called in people like Eddie Chapman, who was a well-known safecracker, a Peter man, as they used to be known. They brought people in who were forgers to forge documents for the agents and so on. So a criminal record is not a bar for being a member of 85. In fact, in some ways, it could prove to be an advantage. The skill trees, that system of skill trees, I'm going to keep the same, though, again, we can broaden that out a little bit. I'm pretty much going to let the characters choose their own skills in that. So they will start, for example, if they're services, they're going to have the military background skill. In fact, everyone who comes into the unit will get the military background skill. They have at least a working knowledge of a firearm. They're going to know that at least. But of course, if you've been in the services for a while, you tend to specialise. So you might have that. You might add in later on, further up the tree, something like sniper or survival expert or unarmed combat expert, that kind of thing. Now, I mentioned background earlier, so the characters will flesh out their background themselves. First thing is we want to know where they're from. They've got three options there. They can be from the home territories, we might say, from the solar system, Earth, lunar base, Mars base, perhaps from the big space station out at Jupiter. So they can be from there. They can be from what are called the near colonies. Those are the ones closest to Earth who generally are in line. They're pretty calm, steady places. Or they can be from the outer rim. This is where all the action is taking place. This is where we have the revolt going on against the corporations, against the government. And of course, we have all those little uncharted places out there as well. Or it's where people are going to hide things that they don't necessarily want to be found. Conventionally, to create your character, you roll dice. In pretty much every RPG, there's dice rolling at some point. That's okay, but again, because I want to start with experienced characters who are something of an expert in at least one field, rather than rolling dice and rolling and re-rolling and re-rolling until we get a decent number, I'm going to use a system that I saw on a PDF from Daniel Roos, which is your three main stats, your speed, intellect, combat, get 27 points in each of those. You then get another 35 points to distribute as you will. For your sanity, fear and body saves, you get 12 in each to start, and you get another 25 points again to distribute as you will. There's one or two other things as well. You get 5 points that you can put onto anything, your hit points, any of your skills, one or two other little changes. So again, it's not so random, and it just allows the players to customize their characters a little further. So yeah, that's a little bit of a change. Maybe that's a sci-fi thing, because generally in D&D or fantasy games, you start at level 1, right? You're the level 1 fighter with a wooden stick and a very small shield. You're the level 1 wizard who's got 3 hit points and hides a lot. And of course, part of the enjoyment in that game is progressing through your levels. I think when you get into sci-fi in particular, there seems to be less emphasis on that levels. Of course, Call of Cthulhu has no levels either. There, you tend to start fully formed. Traveller, of course, you create your whole characters last for 30 years before you start the adventure, and there is the possibility of dying in that, or at least there was in the old version. I think they might have changed that in the later versions. So this is the same thing. The character has skill and experience in a particular area. That is why they're being recruited in to AT5. If you've got, let's say, a raw recruit in the army, they're not put into SAS, right? They're not put into that sort of unit. They have to go through and develop their skills, and then they potentially get selected for that specialist outfit. And the first assignment for Assault Team 5 is they're going to be placed out on Prospero's Dream, which is a huge, well, space station. It's more of a space city on the outer rim. It's known as the gateway to the rim, and they're going to be placed there in order to investigate, infiltrate, collect intelligence on the drug cartels who are funding the revolt. So that's going to be their initial brief. Of course, other missions are going to come in as things develop, and you know, there's bound to be one or two unpleasant surprises on the way. And I'm very pleased to say we've got a few more people signed up for the campaign now. We've got some Bedford Gladiators, and I put a notice up on the Mothership Discord and also the Good Friends of Jackson Elias podcast Discord as well, saying I've got this new campaign going, and I've had some people come in from there. So we're definitely working online because the people are spread all over the place. And at the recommendation of one or two of the players, we're going to be using Discord and Roll20. In fact, I think now that Roll20 is sort of integrated within Discord, so that should make things a bit easier to set up. I'm going to be looking at that during the coming week, how that all works. And Steph, one of the players, he runs games on that regularly, so he's offered help, I'll just say, if I get stuck, for when I get stuck. In terms of scenario, we have that Prospero's Dream setting, which I reviewed in an earlier upload. The great thing with Mothership is there's tons of stuff out there, and I've been downloading loads of these trifold scenarios, these single sheet scenarios, and there's really some great stuff there, and they're very easy to slot into a campaign setting. But I've also been looking outside of that as well. I've been looking at cyberpunk scenarios, for example. Now, cyberpunk adventures are usually set in a city, think your Blade Runner type setup, but in effect, Prospero's Dream is a city in space. At least that's the way I'm approaching it. So that city campaign idea is going to give us a very good start. As well as that, I've been looking, of course, at some Call of Cthulhu. There's a few things in there I can pull in, I'm sure. And even one or two other fantasy scenarios that are quite easily adapted to the space setting. I think the main idea with any scenario is not the outer trappings, the timescale it's set in, the rule system it uses, but the plot. You know, if you can insert something into the narrative that really drives it forward, that really grabs the players, sometimes quite literally, then that's going to be a good addition to the campaign. And of course, we're going to be referring back to past events and also the character backgrounds as well. So yeah, I'm looking forward to tying all these scenarios together and developing that campaign. I'm also looking forward to recording some ambient music, maybe some sound effects as well. My main computer that I did all my recording on was, well, the hard drive was wiped out by a Windows 10 update. So I've made up my mind. I'm switching to, is it Linux or Linux? I think it's Linux. That's another new thing. It's a new year, lots of new things. I'm going to get that uploaded on the computer, and then I'll be able to use that again for my music recording. So I'm looking forward to that, and I'm also looking forward to getting back to GMing as well. I've been playing in a few RPGs over the past sort of few years, but yeah, to get back into GMing, I've wanted to do that for a while, and this looks like the perfect system and the perfect setting. Okay, so I will be posting updates here. If it is possible to do, if all the players are okay with it, I'll record the sessions as well in one form or another. So I'll be putting that out. You can follow the campaign and see how it develops. To make sure you're keeping up to date with that, please do click the subscribe button below if you haven't already. And as always, please do let me know any thoughts, any ideas. If you are running or have run a Mothership campaign, I'll be interested to hear any tips that you have. Oh, and sci-fi, right? A lot of technical stuff. a lot of science. So I'm doing some research there. In fact, I got a book just the other week where the author is talking about developing anti-gravity devices. Yep, very interesting book. I've not been able to put it down. I'll see you in space.